The biker thought he was looking at a poor janitor, an old man with a broom, a faded work shirt, and nothing to show for his life. 20 minutes later, he would be standing in a tiny office, staring at a photograph that would bring him to tears. Because the quiet janitor he mocked had once carried 23 wounded soldiers through enemy fire, and the man he called a failure was one of the greatest heroes he had ever met. Some men are defined by the noise they make, the roar of an engine, the weight of a gold watch, the easy sound of a confident laugh. Derek was one of those men. His world was all about surfaces, the gleaming chrome of his motorcycle, the hardened leather of his jacket, the carefully built image of a man who answered to no one. He moved through life like he owned it, and he was teaching his 8-year-old son Leo to do the exact same thing. The school pickup was their ritual. Derek's motorcycle, a beast of polished steel, would rumble up to the curb of Northwood Elementary, its growl turning the heads of every parent in a sensible sedan or minivan. His friends, a pack of men cut from the same cloth, often joined him, their bikes lined up like a row of snarling iron dogs. They were a spectacle in this quiet, suburban world. "Look at that, Leo," Derek would say, nodding towards a father struggling with a double stroller. "That's what happens when you play by their rules. You end up soft," Leo, swimming in a miniature version of his father's leather vest, would nod. He idolized his father. He saw the world through Derek's eyes, a world split into the strong and the weak, the loud and the silent, the winners, and the ones who cleaned up after them. And in this world, no one was more silent, more invisible than Walter Hayes. Walter was the school janitor. He was a man who seemed to move in slow motion, with deep lines around his eyes and a permanent stoop in his shoulders from decades of pushing a broom. His clothes were worn, not in the stylish way of designer jeans, but with the real fatigue of fabric washed 1,000 times. He moved through the chaotic halls of Northwood Elementary like a gentle ghost, a whisper of disinfectant and quiet work. He was there before the first bell and long after the last child went home, patiently wiping away the day's smudges and spills, restoring order. The children, in their innocent way, recognized his kindness. They knew him as Mr. Walter, the man who'd retrieve a lost ball from the roof without a complaint, or offer a shy, grandfatherly smile in the hall. But to a man like Derek, Walter wasn't a person. He was a symbol, a fixture. He was the lowest rung on the ladder Derek was so proud to have climbed. Derek saw the worn-out boots, the faded work shirt, and the quiet way Walter avoided eye contact. And he saw failure. A man who'd amounted to nothing more than a mop and a bucket. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Derek and 2 of his friends were leaning against their bikes, waiting for the final bell. Leo stood beside his father, trying to copy his intimidating posture. Through the glass doors, they could see Walter. He was on his hands and knees, meticulously scrubbing a stubborn scuff mark from the linoleum floor. He worked with a slow, deliberate focus, as if this single black mark was the only thing that mattered in the world. Derek let out a short, nasty laugh. He nudged his friend. "Check it out. That's what I'm talking about, Leo. That's your future if you don't stay sharp. Spending your golden years scrubbing floors." His friend snickered. "My back hurts just looking at him." "Exactly," Derek said, his voice loud enough to carry. "Some people are just born to be on their knees." Leo looked from his father to the old man inside. He saw Mr. Walter, the man who had once fixed the chain on his bike during recess. He felt a small, uncomfortable pang in his chest he couldn't quite name. But then he looked back at his father, at the confident smirk and the approving nod, and he pushed it down. His father knew best. His father was strong. The old man was not. It was that simple. The bell shrieked, and the doors burst open. But Derek wasn't watching for his son. His eyes were still fixed on the janitor, who was slowly, painfully, getting to his feet. A perfect target for the day's lesson. He had no idea that before this day ended, he would beg the old janitor for forgiveness, and his 8-year-old son would learn a lesson neither of them would ever forget. Childhood innocence is a fragile thing. It sees the world not as it is, but as it should be. It finds kindness where adults see weakness. And in the halls of Northwood Elementary, no one saw Walter Hayes more clearly than a second grader named Emma. Emma was a quiet girl with bright, curious eyes. While most children were a whirlwind of noise, Emma was an observer. She noticed things. She noticed how Mr. Walter's tired eyes would light up with a smile whenever a child said hello. She'd once seen him stop in a busy hallway to help a first grader tie his shoe, his large, calloused hands moving with surprising gentleness. To Emma, Mr. Walter was a quiet kind of magic. One afternoon, Emma was walking to her mother's car, clutching a drawing of a rainbow, when she saw Mr. Walter holding the main door open he always did, offering a quiet "have a good evening" to the stream of kids and parents. Most people hurried by without a glance. But Emma stopped. "For you, Mr. Walter," she said, holding up her drawing. Walter blinked, as if waking from a dream. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face, crinkling the deep lines around his eyes. "Well now," he said, his voice soft and raspy. "That's about the prettiest thing I've seen all day." "Thank you, little miss." He took the drawing carefully by the edges, as if it were a priceless artifact. It was at that exact moment that Derek and Leo walked up. Derek saw the exchange, the shabby janitor and the little girl, and a sneer curled his lip. "He saw an opportunity, Leo," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "See that? That's a dead-end job for you. So desperate for attention, he's got to get it from little kids." Walter's smile faltered, the light in his eyes dimmed. He seemed to shrink, folding back into his cloak of invisibility. Leo shifted his feet. He saw the hurt that flickered across the old man's face before it was hidden. It was that same uncomfortable feeling from before, only stronger this time. But before Derek could say more, a small voice piped up. "He's not desperate," Emma said, her lower lip trembling. She turned to face the towering man in the leather jacket. "Mr. Walter's the nicest person in the whole school. He takes care of everything. He takes care of us." Derek was taken aback, momentarily speechless. He hadn't expected to be challenged by a second grader. He let out a disbelieving chuckle. "Is that right?" He said, "Well, honey, when you grow up, you'll learn that nice doesn't pay the bills. Now run along." Emma's eyes welled up with tears. She turned and ran to her mother, who'd been watching with a look of alarm. Walter quietly folded Emma's drawing and tucked it into the pocket of his work shirt. He went back to his post by the door, his shoulders a little more stooped than before. His face was a mask, but his silence was heavier now. Derek clapped a hand on Leo's shoulder. "See, son? People who have nothing get defensive about it. Remember that." But as they walked to the motorcycle, Leo looked back. He saw Mr. Walter, a lonely figure in the doorway, and for the first time, Leo didn't just feel uncomfortable. He felt a sliver of doubt. His father was strong, yes, but was he right? Arrogance is a hungry thing. For Derek, the quiet dignity of Walter Hayes was an invitation. He was determined to break that silence, to prove to his son and to himself that men like Walter were nothing. The stage was set for the following Friday. It was parent-teacher conference day. The school was humming with the nervous energy of waiting parents. Derek and two of his biker friends swaggered through the entrance, their heavy boots clacking on the polished floor. A deliberate, disruptive sound. Leo trailed behind them, a knot in his stomach. He'd seen his father like this before, playing to an audience, looking for a target. They found one almost immediately. Walter was in the main corridor, polishing the glass of the school's trophy case. He worked with his usual quiet focus, his reflection a blurry figure among the golden cups and plaques. Derek stopped right in front of him. His friends fanned out, creating an intimidating wall. Walter stopped his work and slowly turned. His face remained neutral, but there was a deep weariness in his gaze. Well, look who it is," Derek began, his voice booming. Nearby parents turned to look. "Still polishing other people's achievements, old man. You ever win anything yourself? Or is Janitor of the Month the highest honor you've ever seen?" His friends chuckled. A few parents shifted uncomfortably, looking away. Walter said nothing. He just held his cleaning cloth, his silence his only shield. But his silence only egged Derek on. "What's the matter, cat? Got your tongue?" Derek taunted, stepping closer until he loomed over the older man. "I'm talking to you. I asked you a question." Leo's heart was pounding. He wanted to disappear. He could feel the stares of the other adults. Down the hall, he saw Principal Williams step out of her office, her brow furrowed. Then, clumsy with anxiety, Leo stumbled. His water bottle slipped from his backpack, clattering onto the floor and rolling right to Walter's feet. Without a moment's hesitation, Walter bent down with a soft grunt of effort. He picked up the bottle and held it out to Leo. His eyes met the boy's, and in them, Leo saw not weakness, but a profound and gentle sadness. Derek scoffed, snatching the bottle from Walter's hand. "Don't you touch my son's things," he snarled. "He doesn't need your help. He needs to learn to stand on his own 2 feet, not expect handouts from the hired help." He shoved the bottle back into Leo's bag. "This is exactly what I'm talking about, Leo. This is weakness. This is what you become if you don't fight for your place in the world." Finally, Walter spoke. His voice was low, not with fear, but with a gravelly resolve. "The boy just dropped his bottle, sir," he said, his gaze fixed on Derek. "There's no shame in a little help. We all need it sometimes." "Oh, so you're an expert on needing help, are you?" Derek shot back, delighted he'd finally gotten a reaction. "Listen, my son will be a leader, a winner. He won't be cleaning up messes. He'll be making them for people like you to deal with." Suddenly, a clear, firm voice cut through the tension. "That's enough, Mr. Thompson." Principal Williams stood a few feet away, her arms crossed, her eyes like steel. Derek turned, a smirk still on his face. "Principal, just teaching my son a valuable life lesson." "Your lesson is disruptive and disrespectful to a valued member of my staff," she said, her voice unwavering. "This is a school, not your personal stage. Walter, are you all right?" Walter gave a slight nod. "I'm fine, Principal Williams. Just doing my job." He turned back to the trophy case and began polishing again, his movements steady, an island of calm in the wake of the storm. Derek, knowing he couldn't win against the principal, just grunted. He grabbed Leo's arm. "Come on, let's go. Seems this place is full of people who don't understand how the real world works." As he was dragged away, Leo looked back. He saw Mr. Walter's reflection in the glass, a tired old man surrounded by shining trophies. But he also saw Principal Williams place a reassuring hand on Walter's arm, and the unspoken understanding that passed between them. The crack in Leo's worldview widened into a chasm. His father had been loud and cruel. Mr. Walter had been quiet and kind. And Leo began to suspect that true strength didn't always roar. Sometimes it just endured. Life has a funny way of serving up lessons. Often it's not a lecture, but a simple inconvenience that forces us down a path we'd never choose. For Derek, that lesson was about to be delivered by an email from the school cafeteria. A few days later, a notification popped up in his inbox. "Dear Parent Guardian, the lunch account for Leo Thompson is currently overdue. Please remit payment to avoid service interruption." Derek stared at the email. It wasn't the money. The amount was tiny. It was the principle of it. His account? Overdrawn? Impossible. It was an insult. Furious, he stormed into the school the next morning, a printout of the email clutched in his fist. He marched right to Principal Williams's office. "There's a mistake with my son's lunch account," he announced, slamming the paper on her desk. "I want this fixed now." Principal Williams sighed softly. "Mr. Thompson, I'm sure it's just a clerical error. The person who manages and reconciles the overdue accounts is the best person to speak with." "Then where are they?" Derek demanded. "I want to talk to them." The principal hesitated for a moment, a strange, unreadable look on her face. It was a mix of reluctance and something like irony. "Very well," she said, standing up. "He's usually in his office at this time. Follow me." She led him down a less trafficked hallway, toward the back of the school near the boiler room. She stopped in front of an unassuming door marked simply, "Facilities." "He's in here," she said. Derek frowned. "The janitor? You're telling me the janitor handles the lunch money?" He let out a harsh laugh. "You've got to be kidding me. No wonder. It's all screwed up." Principal Williams's gaze hardened. "Walter has handled the overdue accounts for this school for 12 years, Mr. Thompson. He does it as a favor. His records are flawless." She pushed the door open, revealing a small, cramped room. It was more of a large closet than an office, with shelves of cleaning supplies on one side and a small, battered metal desk on the other. The room was empty. He must have stepped out, Principal Williams said. "We'll be right back, please. Wait inside." She gestured for him to enter, her expression leaving no room for argument. Grumbling, Derek stepped into the small office. The scent of lemon polish and old paper filled the air. The principal quietly closed the door, leaving him alone. Derek glanced around with a sneer. This was it, the command center for the man he so openly despised. A tiny, windowless room. It just confirmed everything he believed. Then his eyes fell on the desk. It was old, but immaculately organized. Pens stood in a tin can. And in the center, propped up by a small wooden stand, was a single framed photograph. Curiosity pulled him closer. He leaned over, expecting a faded picture of a wife or grandkids. But that's not what he saw. And in that moment, the world as Derek Thompson knew it, the world he had built on noise and judgment, began to fall apart. A photograph is a silent story. It captures one frozen moment, but it can speak volumes. The photo on Walter Hayes' desk wasn't a whisper. It was a thunderclap. Derek just stared, his sneer melting into slack-jawed confusion. The photograph was black and white. It showed a young man, barely in his 20s, with a square jaw and eyes that burned with intensity. He was dressed in a crisp military uniform, shoulders thrown back with pride. His face was lean and hard, a world away from the soft, weary features of the old janitor. The young soldier in the photo was Walter. It was unmistakably him, yet it was also a complete stranger. The photograph looked ordinary, until Derek noticed the blue ribbon around the young soldier's neck. Then his entire world stopped. But it wasn't just the image of the young, powerful Walter that held Derek frozen. It was what was pinned to his uniform, a collection of medals and ribbons. For the first time in years, Derek felt something he wasn't used to feeling. Fear, not of another man, but of who he had become. And hanging from a blue, star-spangled ribbon around his neck was the most sacred, most revered symbol of American military bravery. A Medal of Honor. Derek's breath caught in his throat. He knew what that was. Everyone did. It wasn't just an award. It was given for courage so profound it was almost unimaginable. For risking one's life above and beyond the call of duty. His eyes darted around the frame. Tucked behind the photo was a yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Hometown Hero, the Angel of Da Nang." There was another smaller photo of Walter shaking hands with General Westmoreland, the commander of all U.S. forces in Vietnam. Derek felt a wave of vertigo, as if the floor had dropped out from under him. The quiet, stooped janitor he had mocked. The man he called weak. The man whose hands he didn't want touching his son's water bottle. This man was a hero, an actual decorated American hero. He leaned closer, reading the smaller text in the article. Actions near Da Nang in February 1968. Medevac crew chief Walter Hayes. Helicopter shot down. Organized a defense that lasted 16 hours. Personally carried a dozen wounded men to safety. Credited with saving the lives of 23 men. 23 men. The number echoed in the tiny, silent office. The man who silently picked up his son's water bottle had carried wounded soldiers on his back while under enemy fire. The man whose worn-out clothes he had laughed at wore the nation's highest military honor. The man he accused of never winning anything had won a battle for 23 souls. Nausea washed over Derek. Every sneer, every cruel word he had ever said to Walter replayed in his mind, now drenched in a hideous, burning shame. He saw his own reflection in the picture frame's glass, a distorted, ugly mask. The tough guy, the man who knew how the world worked. He was a fool, a loud, arrogant fool, who had stood on the shoulders of giants and had the nerve to look down on them. The door creaked open. Derek spun around. Walter Hayes stood in the doorway. He stopped when he saw Derek, his expression one of mild surprise. He looked from Derek's pale, shocked face to the photograph on his desk, and a quiet understanding dawned in his old, tired eyes. The secret he had guarded for so long, not out of shame but out of humility, was out. Shame is a powerful thing. It burns away arrogance and leaves behind only the cold, hard truth. In that tiny office, surrounded by the scent of lemon polish and the ghosts of a long-ago war, Derek felt the full force of that truth. He stood frozen, unable to speak. He looked at the old man in the doorway, the janitor, and for the first time he truly saw him. He saw the strength hidden in the stoop of his shoulders, a strength born from carrying burdens far heavier than a bucket of water. Walter looked at Derek, his gaze steady. There was no triumph in his eyes, only a quiet resignation that his anonymous world had been breached. Derek started his voice a hoarse whisper. "I don't understand." Before Walter could respond, Principal Williams stepped into the room. She looked at Derek's shattered expression, at Walter's calm face, and then to the photograph. "You wanted to see the man who handles the lunch accounts, Mr. Thompson," she said softly. "This is him. This is Walter Hayes." She gently picked up the framed photo. "But I see you found another one of his responsibilities, one he took on long before he ever came to Northwood." She held the frame out for Derek to see again. "This was taken in 1968, she said. "Walter was a medevac crew chief in the Army. During the Tet Offensive, his helicopter was shot down while trying to rescue wounded soldiers. For 16 hours under constant enemy fire, Walter, just a boy himself, organized the survivors. He tended to the wounded, and when a rescue chopper finally landed, he refused to leave until every single one of the other men was safe." Derek's knees felt weak. "The newspapers called him the Angel of Da Nang," she went on. "He saved 23 soldiers that day. For his actions, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. He could have done anything. He was offered book deals, a life of fame. He said he'd had enough noise to last a lifetime. He wanted a quiet life of service. So for over 30 years, he has been the janitor here. He says keeping the place safe and clean for children is the most honorable work a man can do." The room was utterly silent. The full, crushing weight of his ignorance settled on Derek. He had mocked a living legend. He had taught his son to disrespect a man who embodied every virtue Derek only pretended to have. Principal Williams wasn't finished. She gestured to the neat stack of lunch account records on the desk. "You came here because of an overdue account," she said, her voice dropping lower. "Let me tell you Walter's other secret. For the past 12 years, every month, Walter takes his military pension and part of his salary, and he quietly pays off every overdue lunch account at this school. Not one child in this school has ever gone hungry because of Walter Hayes. Not one. No child at Northwood has ever had their lunch service cut off, because Walter Hayes won't let it happen." She looked directly at Derek. "Your account wasn't overdrawn, Mr. Thompson. The system flagged it yesterday. Walter simply hadn't gotten to it yet. He was going to pay it today, out of his own pocket, just like he does for dozens of other families." That was the final blow. He had been on the verge of accepting charity from the very man he had humiliated. Shame, hot and absolute, flooded every inch of Derek's being. He could only stare at Walter Hayes, the quiet janitor, the Angel of Da Nang, the silent benefactor, and see the reflection of his own wretched soul. There are moments that change a man's life for Derek. This was it. The arrogant man who had swaggered into the school that morning had been burned to ash. He looked at Walter, whose face held no judgment, no anger, just a profound stillness. "Why?" Derek finally choked out after all. "Why work as a janitor?" Walter finally met his gaze. "Because this is real," he said, his voice quiet but heavy with history. "Here, you sweep a floor. It gets clean. You help a child. They smile. It's simple. It's honest work." He looked at the photo. "I keep that there to remember the boys who didn't come home, and to remember that the most important work isn't always the work that gets applause." Every word was a hammer blow to Derek's ego. He had built his life on applause, on being seen, on being loud. Walter had built his on quiet service. In that tiny room, it was terrifyingly clear who the stronger man was. Derek's eyes burned with tears. He stammered, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry what I said, what I did." In front of my son, the shame was a physical thing, a hand squeezing his throat. "I had no idea, I know," Walter said simply. That's the point. You never know what story a person carries. Just then, the door opened. It was Leo, who had grown worried waiting outside. "Dad? Is everything okay?" Derek looked at his son, the boy to whom he had fed a diet of poison and prejudice. He knew this was his one chance to teach a lesson that truly mattered. He knelt down to eye level with Leo, his face streaked with tears. "No, Leo," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's not okay. I was wrong. Everything I told you about this man, it was wrong. I was a bully. I was a fool." He stood and gently guided Leo forward. "Leo, this is Mr. Walter Hayes. I taught you to judge him by his job. But I was blind. This man is a hero, a real hero. He is braver and stronger and better than I could ever hope to be." He looked from his son to Walter. "I want you to shake his hand," Derek said, his voice firm with a new, humbled conviction. "I want you to shake the hand of a great man. And I want you to remember this moment for the rest of your life. True strength, real honor, it's on the inside." Leo looked up at the old janitor, trying to understand, but he understood the tears and the broken voice of his father. Hesitantly, Leo extended his small hand. Walter looked down at the boy, and a genuine, grandfatherly smile touched his lips. He wiped his large, calloused hand on his trousers before taking Leo. In his grip was surprisingly strong, yet incredibly gentle. "It's an honor to meet you, Leo," Walter said softly. In that handshake, a cycle of arrogance was broken, and a new one, built on respect and humility, had just begun. That day, Derek walked into the school believing strength was loud. He walked out understanding that true strength is quiet. Sometimes it wears old boots. Sometimes it pushes a broom. Sometimes it carries memories no one can see. And sometimes the greatest heroes in the room are the ones everyone else overlooks. Because you never know whose hand you're shaking. And you never know whose sacrifice built the world you're standing in.